favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Substitute teacher budget.
All right, at our last meeting, I think Carolyn asked the question about substitute teacher budgets and expenditures. So I'm just gonna kind of answer that question here and present some information here. So I'll take our attention to the screen. So I'll show two exhibits here. This is the first one. This is our regular education substitute teacher budget, and I'll blow this up to make it just a little bit bigger here. But this is ultimately the last 8 fully completed school years plus the current school year. So here in this column here, this is our budget amount that we have for each of these years. And then you can see how much we spend each month incrementally, October, November. So in November of this current school year, we spent $54,000 on substitute teacher costs, okay? Right underneath that then, I have that cumulative progression here. So as we take a look in this area here, we spent $41,000 in September. We were up to 90 cumulatively in October. And then in November, we were at 144,000. When we take a look at how much of the budget we've consumed by the end of November, you can see that we are at 24% of the entire budget, which is exactly where we were at this time last year and similar to years prior. So last year at 24% of the budget, you can see we ended at using 98% of the budget. Earlier in our district's history, we, at the beginning of these years, we would hire long-term teacher substitutes and put them on our payroll. For Affordable Care Act purposes, when you have a full-time employee, you need to offer them an offer of benefits, and that can be costly. That can be as much as $30,000 if they choose the family plan. So we use teachers on call to essentially supply us with our substitute teachers, and then they make the offer of benefits. So you can see if we take a look at our budgets here, we used to be at about $284,000, and then we kicked that up to $600,000 as we basically shifted cost off of our payroll and onto this particular budget. So this is, if I scroll all the way over to the right here, in this area of the screen right here in the middle right-hand side, you can see going 4 out of the last 5 years, we finished under budget. So last year we were $9,000 under budget. Year before that, we were $12,944 under budget. The year before that, $75,000 under budget. The year prior to that, we went over budget by $41,000. So it just kind of gives you an idea. This expense can be volatile, and reasons for that is like long-term subs. If we have a lot of teachers that are out on maternity leave, that forces our hand to bring in more substitute teachers. So these budgets can go up and down quickly for various reasons, but by and large, we've been doing fine here in our expenditures. This $75,000 savings, that was the COVID year. So a lot of those savings in that particular year were due to the fact that we didn't have teachers from March 20th onwards. But altogether, our budgets have been relatively stable. And then we have that exact same information here for our special education. So let me scroll to the left here. So this lot less teachers here, so you can see the month-to-month progression. We have $125,000 in this budget here in the current year. Year to date, we spent $58,000, and we are tracking over in this budget here. So typically, our previous high water mark through the end of November was 37%. This year, we're at 47%. A couple of reasons for that. We have 2 special education maternity leaves. So with that being said, we have 2 full-time employees that are on, are on this embedded in this budget right now. So when we created this budget, obviously we didn't foresee that, and those things happen. There is a cost savings though that comes with that in our normal special education budget to pay teachers. Some of them come off if they're not getting paid while they're out on leave. So sometimes there is a cost savings that's to offset the extra expenses we're seeing here. We also had 2 paraprofessional positions that we were unable to fill, that we needed to have somebody there to do those roles. So we ultimately hired 2 special ed teachers as subs to fill the 2 paraprofessional positions that were unfilled. So while it looks like we're going to be over budget here, we have a $125,000 budget, we're likely to be over. There will be an offsetting cost savings in our salaries that we pay to our employees. So we are under budget, in our Fund 27 salaries year to date. So I hope that just kind of draws, or helps you understand kind of our substitute teacher budgets and what we have here. So this is what, for our bigger expenses, and namely salaries, benefits, those are 75% of all of our expenses. Our utility costs for energy and whatnot, our transportation cost to Dousman, and this particular expense here are our biggest ones that I track like this to kind of see where we're at and uncover kind of where we're headed as we move forward with it. Do you have any questions about that, Carolyn?
One, is it cheaper for us to pay teachers on call and hire a full-time sub through them? Or is it cheaper for us to just hire a full-time para and pay their benefits? I'm asking because I met someone this weekend that was a para for us, and she was part-time, but she wanted benefits, so she wanted to be full-time, and we couldn't give that to her, so she moved to a different school district.
Yes.
So I'm wondering why we,
So, I mean, so I guess let me just make sure I get your question right. If we have a paraprofessional that's part-time with us for 29 hours a week,
well, yeah, but if, no, let's say we would have hired somebody full-time, just a normal para, we found somebody to fill that position, full-time, we're paying them benefits, or is it cheaper for us to pay teachers on call?
teachers on call.
Okay, I didn't know what the hourly rate was.
Yep.
Okay.
So, I mean, again, as much as I like to provide benefits to people, it feels good. It's expensive. It's $30,000. So you got to play that balancing act of managing the district's budget and the taxpayers' dollars. When we make that offer, if they decline it, then it's a $3,000 annual expense. We give folks $3,000 when they decline our offer of health. When they accept it, like I said earlier, it can be as much as $25,000 to $30,000 for the family plan. That can be as much as the paraprofessional's annual salary. So it's volatile, but typically it's a more controlled expense going through TOC.
Okay.
So it's lesser in that sense.
Okay.
We hate to have people leave, but we just have to create the budgets
Right.
at times and kind of live with them.
I was just
No,
making sure that,
Yeah.
just because we're doing that for two people, that we weren't, that it's a
Right.
financial decision.
This is probably a first that we've had to do it, because at this point now we have paraprofessional positions that we cannot fill, that we must. Like, there's really no choice when a student has in their IEP that they need a paraprofessional. It's not we're not at liberty to maybe do that or maybe not. Like, no, we have to do this. So I think that's the explanation we'll provide there on why we hired those two special ed substitute teachers to fill paraprofessional roles. You guys have any other questions about that? Okay.
All right, moving on to history or Waukesha County referendum.
All right. So in the packet, I gave everybody a little bit of a history of the Waukesha County referendums going back to 2010. So I'm just going to kind of scroll through this here on screen here. I get it's a lot of text there and it's small font here, but I highlighted in green. Just let me grab my exhibit here for a quick second. I highlighted in green the referendums that are recurring referendums. So when you're seeking to increase your revenue limit forever, I've highlighted those in green. The yellow questions I've highlighted are those that were asked by Waukesha County school districts that were looking for temporary relief in their revenue limit. And then the ones that are not highlighted at all are the debt issue ones here. So I'll just expand this a little bit more for a second here. So if we take a look at this very first one, this is done alphabetically by date. So Arrowhead Union High School on 11/8/2016 sought $64.7 million to issue debt. That's a capital project. So they had 9,168 yeses and 10,900 noes. So it failed. So they got a brief description here that school districts can enter, and then they have the exact text of the question that was asked. So this is for all school districts here. I think there's 3 pages of these here. And if we kind of scroll down, I'll take us to Mukwonago's here. All right, so let's see what we did here. On 4/3/2012, we sought $11.2 million, a non-recurring referendum. So it was, I think, 5 years of additional funds to supplement our operating budget, to maintain existing educational programs. That one failed, 3,300 votes to 5,200 no votes. Fast forward to 2016 in April, we did our high school project. That passed at about 58%, okay? And then we had a non-recurring referendum here. So we asked for an additional, if I just scroll over to the language here, we asked for an additional $350,000 per year for 20 years to operate our new spaces. So to heat the PAC, to heat the West Gym, you have all this additional square footage that obviously costs additional money. It takes more manpower when you have more square feet that you got to clean. So if we would have asked for $350,000 forever, that would have been a recurring referendum. Since there's a 20-year sunset on this, it's a non-recurring referendum. So I'm going to take an opportunity here to walk us through 3 school district revenue limits here, okay? So I'm going to take us through Sussex Hamilton, Kettle Moraine, and then Mukwonago here. So I'm going to get a little bit wonky here. I want to keep this somewhat high level so it's understandable for all. Unfortunately, school district finance isn't just always straightforward, but I'm going to do my best here, okay? So in Sussex Hamilton, in this particular column here, this is 2019-20 that I'm highlighting. They passed a recurring referendum for $1.5 million. And I'm going to show you the impact that it had on their per member revenue limit, okay? So how this begins here, so if I look at the 17-18 school year, and give me 1 second, I'll make this a little bit bigger here. All right, so in the 17-18 school year, I'm going to talk about base revenue and third Friday, 3-year average FTEs. Those are our third Friday student counts. In 17-18, Hamilton had $48,107,000 that they got in tax levies and equalization aid. They call that their base revenue. They had 4,636 kids in their 3-year average. Okay, so that average amount is in yellow. That's $10,376.85. Okay, so what's going to happen here, I'm going to zoom out for a second here. That base revenue per member that they ended with in 17-18 is what their starting point is for 18-19. So base revenue per member, they ended the year at $10,376, and they will start the next year with that. So now I'll zoom in. To that amount, there's 2 things that can push that 10,000, that number in yellow, that 10,376 upwards. It can be an increase allowed in the state budget for the low revenue increase. So that's a district that's at the very bottom like us. They can say, hey, everybody at the bottom, if you're at the bottom, you can move up to 10,200 or whatever the number is. Or they can make an allowance for all school districts, allowed per member change. So if I just scroll to the right for a second here, those 2, what you're seeing right here, these 2 areas here are only impacted by the state biennial budget, okay? So there was no increase of any sort there in 18-19, so their number initially stays at 10,376. In this particular year they had 4,708 students, so when you do the basic math there, $10,376 per student times 4,708 students, that gives them $48.8 million. Now this $48.8 million, there's two adjustments that can occur that would permanently increase this. One is called the transfer of service, and the other is a referendum. The transfer of service would take place if you have a student who maybe comes in, they transfer into your school district and they're special needs, and they cost $150,000. What the transfer of service is there to represent is that you shouldn't have to cut $150,000 from your existing kids to accommodate new expenses that may show up. The transfer service could also be if the village of Mukwonago said, hey, we're not going to plow certain roads anymore, and that expense falls on Andy Wagner's crew. We could do a transfer of service from the village of Mukwonago to us. Maybe we have to hire more people, or when there's a transfer of service, that will recognize the cost initially in that particular year. And I'll show you how that will ultimately increase their per member amount. But in this particular year, they did not have a transfer of service. They did not have a recurring referendum, so we are not increasing that basic amount of $48.8 million. So when we come back out and we do the math again, ultimately, we're still at $10,376. All right. So we're going to fast forward to the next year here. Now we're going to get to the referendum. So we ended in this green area here of 10,376. And now we're going to go to 1920. So in this particular year, state biennial budget gave $175 to every school district. So at this point, they're at 10,551 per member, per student, okay? All right, so when they do that basic multiplication there, 10,551 times their new 3-year average of 4787, they have an operating budget of 50.5 million. So last year, they're at 48.8. Now they're at 50.5, 1 year later. To that 50.5 million, okay, we are going to add, all right, there was a $99,000 transfer of service, and this is a referendum question. I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger, of 1.5 million. So if I add up these 3 cells right there that I have highlighted, that equals $52.1 million. They're asking for a one-time injection of $1.5 million forever. So you bring it into the number here, and ultimately here, they're allowed to levy $52.1 million across their 4,787 kids. That number now becomes $10,855. In 1 year's time, Sussex increased their per member revenue limit by $509. To show you where this $509 comes from here real quickly, I'm just going to hide a couple columns for a second here. That $509, the first amount, okay, comes, and I'm just going to do it in this cell here, this $175 that came from the state. So of that $509, $175 came from a state biennial budget. All right, this $99,000 for the transfer of service on a per student basis is $20.79 per student. And the $1.5 million that they asked for on a per student basis, that's $313.35. And if I add up all those one-time adjustments here off to the side, I add up those 3 values there, there's our $509. So by asking for a $1.5 million increase, here, give me a second, here, that was ultimately another way of saying, can we have $313 more per student? Okay, so they asked this in April of 2018, I believe, and then it was effective for the 1920 school year. All right, so they were able to move their revenue limit number more quickly, not just through the $175 that state government allowed for. So now, as they move forward, going into the future then, all right, hang with me here. This base revenue per member now has been permanently jumped up to what we have in blue, which is $10,800. Now when we go forward to the following school year, that's our new starting point. In this particular school year, there's $179 that was in the state biennial budget, which now makes their per member revenue limit of just over $11,000. And then you just roll forward from there, and you get the idea of how this ultimately works when you inject a recurring referendum. All right, so that's Hamilton. I'm going to jump to Kettle Moraine. They did something a little bit differently here, so I'll walk us through that here. Okay, so the same type of math still exists. They started at $9,947 at the end of the 17-18 school year. I'm just going to freeze panes here for a second. All right, so they start here in yellow, $9,947. We roll forward to that's our starting point, a per member funding starting point in 18-19. Okay, there was no state adjustments there, just like everybody's adjustments will ultimately really be the same for the most part. So they have 3,576 kids, which gives them $35.5 million. They had a transfer of service of 124,000, so that 35.5 becomes 35, almost 0.7 million. So then at the end of the day, they moved their per member revenue limit because of that small transfer of service from $99.47 to $99.82. So now that is their starting point here going forward. So that $99.82, they go into $19.20. All right, they got $175 additional dollars from the state. All right, they added a $90,000 transfer of service, and now they're up to $10,183. All right, So now in this column here, as we move forward into 2021, if you take a look at the language, and I'll just read it here real quickly. In Kettle Moraine, they did a referendum in April of 2019. And at first they asked for $5.975 million each year, just for 5 years. So a non-recurring, they asked for basically, let's call it $6 million per year for 5 years. The voters said no. It lost 48 to 52. A year later, in April of 2020, they asked for an increasing revenue that's recurring, and I'll show that and demonstrate that here to show you how that works. So rather than $6 million per year for 5 years, they kind of asked for this growing referendum that will ultimately last indefinitely. So this is the first step. So in 2021, they started with $10,183 as their base number. They added $179 per the state biennial budget, so that takes them to $10,300. That gives them a pot of $35.3 million. They did a transfer of service of $202,000, and then their referendum allowed for $2.5 million in the 2021 school year. So in this year, they're adding that $2.5 million in. The following year is another 1.5. The following year is another 1.5. And then next year, there'll be an additional 1.5. If you add up these three amounts plus next year's last year of their last increase, that'll be an additional $7 million they're ultimately injecting into their annual operating budget. So you can see the impact of that here if we kind of start all the way on the left, 99.47, 99.82, it's not too big of a change, up to 10,183. The following year, after the first $2.5 million, they brought in additional almost, I got the number there, $971 per student. The following year is another $568 per student. The following year is another $660 per student. Okay, I'll summarize this here in just a second then. Finally, so I'll take us to Mukwonago here. All right, so there's not too much to it. All right, we started at $9,200, which was rock bottom in the state here. Tied for last year, and this is the 17-18 school year. We were given a $200 increase, and again, on this line here, that's a $200 for those at the very bottom. So those at the very bottom got $200. The following year, we were given $125, plus the $175 that everybody else got. The year after that, we got $121 for being at the bottom, plus another $179 that everybody else got. All right, this 21-22, we were frozen. In 22-23, current school year, we're frozen. We went from 10,000 to 1,016 because we had one transfer of service for accounting for students with special ed, so we just barely moved up that bottom, and I'm going to still refer to our revenue limit as $10,000, even though it's at 1016. It's still essentially at the very bottom of the state, or just barely slightly north. So that's where we are today. So if you, this graph here, I'll blow this up here, represents Mukwonago in the royal blue, and then Hamilton in the red, and Kettle Moraine in the dark blue. So we were pretty close. We were $748 away from Kettle Moraine in 18-19. The next year, we had a $583 funding gap between us and Kettle Moraine, then a $483 gap between us and KM. These next 3 years, it really takes off. Kettle Moraine has $1,100 more dollars than us, then $1,700 more dollars than us, then $2,300 more dollars than us. So kudos to them. It fits what they voted for it, so that's the community has spoken, and in that particular vote, they voted 60% for this recurring referendum. But this is, I don't even know what the exact term of it is, but it wasn't just a one-time increase. It was a 5-time increase, or 4-time, 4 consecutive years of the revenue limit getting pushed up incrementally. So I know I brought this up here simply because I know there was a question asked when I presented on the referendum statewide results here in November about the various municipalities, like the town of Mukwonago, that passed referendums that get more police and more fire, more EMTs. There was a question that somebody asked about recurring referendums, so I thought I would bring this up to highlight how that would work. So this is the way to, if state government doesn't increase our budget through the biennial budget process, If we're flat, and we're still at 10,016, that's going to be a problem. Just flat out, that will be a problem. So, as I don't want to talk about referendums more than I have to, because I understand that ultimately it can mean a tax increase, but it just highlights kind of where this might have to go if the state budget doesn't look good.
How does that affect that tertiary?
Yeah, that's a great question, Joel. I like where your head's at there. Favorite word?
Because he said tertiary.
Yeah. All right. So Kettle Moraine there, as you can see, their funding, their revenue is going to go up a lot. So their expenditures are going to go up as well. As they are negative, their property value on average is way beyond the state average on a per student basis. So property wealth per student is very high, which makes that negative aid percentage very high. So for every dollar they spend past that state average, they lose state aid. So if we're aided at a 50-50 level, I don't quote me on this, but they're probably aided somewhere at the 30-70 level, where of all that $12,384 they got this year, maybe 30% came from the state and the rest has to come from their taxpayers. So tax bills go up.
So their mill rate has had to ratchet up accordingly.
Yes. So
Even beyond what they agreed to pay just for the referendums, now your mill rate's going up because you're getting less state aid, right?
correct. That is correct. So now you're seeing it there. So that's their story there, and I could bring more information back, but I guess I wasn't trying to focus on that piece, and that's a good consideration, clearly. But neighbors to the north, do they have a lot more money? Yeah. That can just create a challenging market for you, right? So it's rare that teachers will commute from Cedarburg to this area of the state to work. You have kind of a fixed pool of people, more or less, here that you're trying to draw from to make 350 teachers happen for each school year and another 350 support staff members. So I hope that was educational here and kind of helps you see how that would work. Do you guys, other questions there on any of that? Okay. Last thing then, I guess, since we're talking about referendums, is I did include an article from the Waukesha Freeman from December 7th. So that was just Oconomowoc is doing a debt issuance or a capital referendum, and they're looking to survey their community, and it sounds similar to some of the facility things we've discussed here about helping out more than just one building, and some of the projects are similar. So I thought I'd just share that as just a little bit of information as to what's happening in Waukesha County. All right, that's all I have there.
Okay, how about the big M on the water tower?
All right, yeah, so we were approached by the Village of Mukwonago, simply looking to see if we would be interested in lending our Fast M logo to them as they look to potentially repaint this water tower here that's just outside our building here. This is the north water tower. The one by the expressway is the south water tower. So they're looking to paint the north water tower sometime in the next 24 months. And so as part of that, they thought maybe we would be interested in letting them use our Fast M if they were to spell Mukwonago with the Fast M leading the word. I said yes. They didn't. They said they needed more backing than just my opinion. So I'm here asking you guys, and then we'll ask the full school board next week, Monday, if they're comfortable lending this and kind of just partnering with the village to let them use that.
I'll make a motion that we push this forward to the full school board for approval.
Second.
All right.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think we need to talk to him about your clout, too.
What's that?
I think we need to talk to him about your clout, too.
Yeah? Yeah, I know I got to step my game up, huh?
You got this.
No. No.
Andy, grounds? Or you got?
Yeah, no, that's you, Andy. So we got the B&G report here. So Andy's got a couple things here. I'll let you run with it, Andy.
All right. So I just giving you a kind of a brief update from last month's conversations. And in the area of Parkview Middle School with the band room consideration of, is there any way to soundproof it any better? I had some discussions with Mrs. Peterson, who's the band director over there. And she, at first I was kind of assuming that this was revolving around her as an individual, not so much everybody in the room. The testing that we did in 2018 was revolved around her and her position. The testing we actually did was on her person and her podium. And then for that, when I had my discussion with her, she kind of looked at it as, no, it would be more the scheme of the whole room for everybody. Me being a previous band person myself, I kind of looked at it as when I was playing an instrument, the noise was always going forward towards the conductor or director, not so much me as the person playing. Now, I was always in the back row, either playing the tuba or the trumpet, not necessarily in the front row receiving what was coming from my way, their way. So looking at all of that, I did look at the options that we kind of listed at last month's meeting. The space that's across the hallway is 700 square feet less than the band room currently, so I don't see that being a viable option. I did look above the ceiling. There is space above the ceiling, but I really just don't see moving that class into that space. The room itself they're in now, there's only 1.5 foot clearance between the ceiling and the roof line, and that would not gain us much space for any type of deflection. As well as all the walls in the room are pretty much covered with lockers for their instruments now, or it's back practice rooms with glass where you wouldn't be able to attach anything. So I did look at flooring. Mrs. Peterson brought an option of a resilient flooring that would help absorb some of the sound. All I have right now is information from an article on it. I've not found any schools that are using it. It did state that you could possibly lose or drop your decibel level in a round of a 15-point level. So looking at the testing process that we did in 18, that would bring it down considerably in that light. So I did contact one of our well-known companies that we use for flooring and got a budget to put that type of flooring in that room, which would be roughly $27,000. Now I did make known to Mrs. Peterson that we're doing a feasibility study throughout the district and that there are a lot of options on the table with schools in the future. When we had that conversation, she was kind of open-minded to the idea that, and she didn't say this in the sense of directing you to make a decision one way or the other, but she said, you know, if we were to spend $27,000 now and the school was to change in 2 years, she didn't know if that made the most sense. So that's the information I have on the room. I don't know if you have any questions at this time further. Okay. So then I was also contacted by Mr. McNulty to look into sensors to put on our doors to see if they're propped open. At the high school, prior to the referendum, we believe that all the schools had that capability at the time. During the referendum and the additions we made, I think we lost some of that ability. So this past summer, I did look into what it would take to do the high school, and that number came back at roughly $19,000. So then we put together a small budget to do all the school doors in the district. Now, some of them may not come to the number that I have in mind because we do have automatic entrances on them. That this was just a hypothetical budget, so we're in the neighborhood of $53,400 for the whole district. What that capability would give us is we could set up through our door access control program to notify us at any time a door is left in an open position where it's not hitting the sensor by a set amount of time. I think we have to then come up with a criteria what that set amount of time is, because as you have time for let out during the day, it very well will be open more than a minute. If you had a fire drill, it might be open for more than a minute, but at the same time, more than a minute on unscheduled times is probably concerning, where if you know a scheduled time, maybe more than 30 seconds should be notified. So we would have to come up with that criteria. And then what that would do would send a text message to the building administration, however we have it set up, the SRO, the building manager, so that those people could be checking on the doors. Most of our doors we have cameras by. I can't say that we have cameras by all of them, in the sense of a problem door we have at the high school would be one of the athletic locker rooms, and obviously we can't put a camera in the locker room to see who's propping it open from the inside, but we would be able to see who's going into it from the outside if it's propped open. So we can definitely put the technology together. Then it's, I think, the next step of making sure that we're using it correctly and we're following suit to hold accountable for propping doors open.
Do you want a motion for moving that to the full board for approval for purchasing that?
That is up to you. I'm just bringing the information to you if you want to go down the road of putting that in place.
Is that technology something that you would be interested in? Because if you are, then we're gonna get some more quotes, and then we would bring that back. But it is something that the administration is definitely interested in.
Okay, that was my question, whether the administration was interested, so.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'm interested in more information. So is that really the next step, is to get additional information or to bring that
I
additional?
mean, if we work with the company that we're integrated with, this is the price.
Okay,
If we were to move to a different company to have a different access control program, it's very well the price would go up, because we'd have to buy into their software and change a bunch of things. So to operate with what we have now, this is a good budget to cover everything. If we need to explore, and I believe we will explore more capabilities in the future. The IT manager and myself have looked at another company in the last year. The pricing that came back was well over double of what we're paying right now. And so at that point, we didn't feel the need to switch.
are you feeling there's any limitations with our current system?
I think at times we just don't know all the capabilities of our system either. Like, anything else, you're in a habit of using what you're using, and we maybe need to reevaluate some of the capabilities of what we have too. There might be capabilities in the process we have now that we just don't know we have.
So with that in mind, then we probably would not be able to find a different system that would be cheaper because it doesn't work with the software that we have. Would that be
Correct.
accurate?
Correct.
So then we would take a motion to the full board, if you guys are comfortable with that.
I think it makes sense to, I mean, we need to know what are we getting? What's the plan of attack? What is it gonna do? Because if it's just, okay, we know a door is open, okay. Is there gonna be 100 alarms for doors being open all day because of certain situations?
Yeah.
To spend 50 grand on something that I think.
So I use it for the idea we have vape sensors at Parkview and the high school. And when we put in the vape sensors at the high school, I had that coming to my phone. When the vape sensor went off, it probably went off 30 to 40 times in a day. Now, I know that administration and others were getting very frustrated with the amount it was going off, and I'm pretty sure that it wasn't always attended to, okay? I'm not saying that this is any different or the same, so we have to have something in place. If we're gonna put this in place, we also have to have rules for our people to follow to make sure that we're holding people accountable for the doors and such too.
I think if I had to guess on how that would work is that we have 3 student safety monitors at Mukwonago High School, along with building managers and B&G staff. If they're being notified, hey, door 4 is open, they'll be on their way to door 4 to investigate it, close it. Now, they do that throughout the day. They'll go door to door, make sure it's always locked, and just keep making rounds, continuously. But if a door opens and they're not gonna get there for 30 minutes as they make their path around, then that door is open for 30 minutes or however long it is. This notification will let them know immediately that door 4 is open, and they'll abandon their current path and get the door 4 right away, close it.
Student safety monitor, that's a student?
No, adults that,
Okay.
Deal. Sorry.
Yeah,
we wouldn't entrust.
Just hijacked your meeting. Yeah, the last thing.
Please don't take anything I'm saying as a negative to putting this into place, because I think it is a positive to put it into place.
If it's you.
I just know we have to be mindful of our people. We have to train our people to run it too.
What ended up happening with the vape thing? What's the?
I
what's the-
believe,
Is it?
it's not in my hands. I assisted in helping put it into place.
Yeah,
I was using it as an example. I do believe that they're using it.
I think it's a perfect example.
Yeah.
So the question would be, so this, I would say that that's a perfect example. Direct parallel.
Yeah.
So if the end result of that is, we stop paying attention to it because it goes off too much, would this be the same thing? $50,000 on something that we're not.
No, I don't think so, given the gravity of what an open door means. It would never be ignored, ever.
Yeah, I get your concern if the vape sensors aren't being utilized the way they're supposed to be. However, I think there's a big difference between a student vaping, still not appropriate, not acceptable, but an open door that's left open, as we found out a week ago, allows unauthorized people, unsafe people to come into the building, and that's many times worse. So that has to be the top priority at that very moment that we get that alert.
and you said we have door sensors on some doors now, so the system's already in place?
Yes, I'm confirming that it's
It's
sending
not
out.
being used. If it is in place,
Yeah.
it's not being used at
Okay.
this moment.
Some doors have sensors, but we're not really monitoring them for,
The system's not set up to work.
Yep.
We're not
Okay.
getting any alarms. We're not getting notifications that.
Got it.
We're,
So do we pay a subscription to this company for this software? And then it's on that company, we can say, hey, we need someone to come in from your company to train our people on how to use this, and then they come?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
Can we have like a refresh if there's like things that we may already own this and we're just not using it? We just need to buy extra little sensors and we're good to go?
So we have the sensors in some doors. We would have to add more sensors in other doors. And then it would be the company that is running the rights to this. Yes, they would bring the training in to train our staff. Again, I believe we're starting at the high school level, but the number I gave you would get us across the district in the long run to
The
cover all
53?
doors at all schools.
The 53?
Yes.
So Andy, that's through Access IT then, correct? The
Yep.
53,000 is to
Yep.
purchase the Access IT, which is what we have, I guess.
It's not really to purchase the program itself, it's to get the actual sensors put in.
Into the doors.
Because we already have the logic to be able to run the program. And so to what Mr. McNulty said earlier, it's not currently being used. That's one of the things that I was gonna draft to our people now is let's get set up with what we do have usable so that we can see how it is being able to be used, and we could probably see what we have for alarms being set off just from the doors we do have it in currently. So I would like to get it operational now.
so I think we're interested in it, but it sounds like you need some more time to do some investigation before we take it to get budget approval?
It's gonna work. It worked in the past. Somehow in between someone in the past and myself, it was not put in place again.
Okay.
I don't know the right answer to say to that, but it hasn't been used for a while. So now that we know that we have a problem, we're trying to address it.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we take Andy's proposal to the full board for the budget approval of the $54,000 for ed and switches. You commented too about some cameras are in place. Do we need more cameras as well? And would that make sense to do that at the same time, or is that different?
We can evaluate that. We're adding cameras, a few here and a few there every year. Every principal has asked for more cameras over time. We did bring in a fair amount in 2018 when we went through the school grant process. And then we felt we had good coverage at that time. Some schools use more on the inside, some use more on the outside. The high school and middle school have the most cameras in the district, and then it goes down from there. Cameras are more covered by the IT department. I do assist in it, but you would get a better answer from them on any
Okay.
requests that are out there.
We can bring back more information on that.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Was that it, Andy, or do you have?
I just had real quick to touch on the tankless water heaters that
Oh, that's right.
Vito had
Name
brought
on
up.
there.
So I did look into that, and really, the answer that came back is there could be a little savings, but we don't know that answer. We would definitely have to re-engineer things. So right now, if a hot water heater goes out, we know replacing it with a like for like is the easiest, where if we use a tankless system, most likely we would have to add a tank into the building to hold storage for the hot water, because we have a circulating pump in every school to circulate hot water. If we didn't put the tank in, then at that point, we would be constantly just pumping hot water and generating hot water to keep it hot. So it's something that I will keep on my radar to look at as we move forward. And if we were to, for example, build a new school in the future, that's something I think we would look at that point too, because then we would have engineering available to us as part of that building. Okay? I did give you an update with a picture that the Prairie View parking lot addition has been completed. We also added a little additional fencing a weekend ago, just to close that off better. So that project is complete. I did happen to be out there this afternoon when release was going on, and we had no cars on the playground that we were using prior. If you look at the picture, the part closest to the road, the double section there and part of the middle section was being used by parents, and everything far as normal parking in the old parking lot was being used by parents or staff, and there was only 2 cars in the pickup line at the north end of the school, so it's working very well. And then I just wanted to give you a quick update on the Eagleville Pavilion, that is on its way of being constructed, and I'll pass you this picture around that was taken today by Mr. Soini, that the high school trades class is out there helping them construct this, and they have all the roof trusses put in place, so they'll be working on getting the roof put on them.
Good progress.
So, that's all I got, unless you have any questions.
Looks like you're free. All right, WSB resolutions.
All right. So I'll walk us through the resolutions that are pertaining to the Finance Facility Committee. So if you have those, let's follow along here, and we'll start with the first one, Resolution 2301, High-Cost Transportation Aid. This particular resolution doesn't really affect us because we are not receiving or eligible for high-cost transportation aid. This is typically aimed at school districts that are sparsely populated. Think northern, rural Wisconsin, where you're traveling pretty far distances, maybe just to get a couple of students. So we don't meet their definition and aren't eligible for this. So, do I want to see those school districts get funded? Sure. Does it help us? No. So I really don't have an opinion here. I hate to say it. I just, if the board feels strongly about it, then support it, help other school districts out. Or we could just be silent. Okay, I guess I'm not really, I'll help you on the other ones, I'm not really helping you on this one.
So I think in general, the representative, we've usually kind of given them the, hey, we want to support this, not support this, but did we take that to the full board and kind of give that consensus of, hey, how do we want to, these 7
Exactly.
things we
Right.
want to give a?
So you guys, as the committee, can decide if you want to send 1 or 2 or all of these to the full board. You can pick and choose as you see fit. I think the learning committee sent all of them, as did the personnel committee. But it's up to you as a committee if you want to
Okay,
send them all and let the whole board decide, or just send some.
So does sending it mean that we support it?
No,
Okay, so we're sending it up with our recommendation, one individually.
that's up to this committee.
so we can send it to the full board, but then as the full board will decide if we want to give it a yes vote, a no vote.
Oh, okay.
So, but I mean, I guess I'm of the opinion of this first one, since it doesn't impact us, that we don't even take that to the full board. We just stay silent on it.
Deal.
Just one opinion.
Agreed.
As the sucker going, then when it comes to voting to represent our district on ones that, and let's say we're not gonna send to the board, therefore we decide that we have no view on it. Is there yes, no, or I don't care, or like,
Just
NA?
abstain, I think.
Abstain? Okay.
Oh, Erica left. Cherry, did you ever do it?
Maybe we just push, unless we care. I mean, let's push it through to the full board and have our discussion
Yeah.
on each one. But we could say, we're gonna push these all through to the full board, and then we have to have our discussion with the full board anyway on the yes and the no for each one.
I'm okay with that.
Because I need to have the list of what everybody agrees on.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
We're just pushing them all.
But no one's gonna make you vote yes or no when you're in that delegate assembly.
Right, I do what I want.
They're not gonna say.
Yeah. I'm watching this via Zoom. If she doesn't do it,
You want to push all of them through to the board for full board input, or on this particular one?
all of them.
I vote that we push all of them through to the board for full board input, and then at that meeting, I'm assuming we'll go through each one and give
We
each
can
one a
do that,
yes
yep.
or a no. I think that'd be the best way to do it.
I'm okay with that. I mean, we'll give them the time that,
Saves you a whole bunch of.
some of them we
reading,
can skip over quick, I assume.
I'm
Well,
good
you'll
with
have
that.
to read them next Monday.
Yeah, an hour later, you tell me when you want to do
too.
it.
Might make it to that musical. That thing.
All right. So just table these then?
No,
Yeah, I'll-
they're recommending, we'll get a motion and a second and a vote to take them all to the full board for discussion next
Okay.
week.
I make a motion that we move these all to the full board for further discussion.
Second.
Any discussion? Cherry?
That's wrong. I'm sorry. So last year, we did this exact process where, where the committees would decide which ones to send forward. But you can do it as a committee however you wish. So. Right, yeah. Last year, if I remember correctly, the learning committee decided not to send 2 forward to the full board, yes. But that's not happening this year.
Right.
But it sounds like Carolyn is gonna see all of them and have to vote yes, no. So,
Oh, and she can abstain.
okay,
Yeah.
When she's at the delegate assembly, no one's, that's what I'm saying,
And if that,
Sounds like the responsible thing to do is send it on
I
down,
think we
have us
send it
all
on
give-
and
give an
we all
opinion
talk
if you
about
like
it. I mean, which is, we could just say, like you brought up 15 and 14, 15, 15, 16. And we say, we're gonna vote no to that. There's other people on our 9-person board that could really wanna vote yes to that. Hopefully they don't. And then, as a representative of our board, I feel like it's fair that everybody have their input versus, which is why we push things forward to the full board. We never have a committee make an executive decision without the full board. Yeah.
It's a long,
It's
makes
kludgy.
for a long meeting.
Yeah, it does. We'll go quick. Everyone's going to read all of these and be prepared. And we're gonna go 1, yes or no, 2, yes or no. I'll help run that section. I'll take over.
I vote Tom,
so,
I vote Tom reads them all.
so we have
Do
a
that.
motion and a second.
I'll make
We
a
have
PowerPoint.
discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, where are we at? We are at
4K
4K options.
All right, so 4K is going to be kind of on our radar here for the next week's special board meeting that we have at 6 o'clock. So I'm going to provide some information to you guys here regarding some financial options and ideas that we could have going forward. So I will go back up to the screen here for a second, and I know I gave you a lot of numbers, a lot of details in this particular board memo here, but I'm just going to kind of walk through it here, all right? So let me enlarge this, make it bigger here. So, all right. So I gave 9 financial scenarios, and there's 3 on this page, and all 3 on this is just basically our status quo of using our current, situation. We have 2 sections, a AM, PM at Prairie View. We have 1 AM section at Big Bend. We use our community partners. And right now, so this is outline what the cost for our current scenario is. So currently, we pay our community partners $2,800 per student, okay? For going forward in those purposes, I looked at how many students did we average over the last 6 years. And those numbers, we've averaged 226 kids in a 4K class, with 197 of those being MASD residents and 29 of those students being open enroll students, okay? Then we have 20 4K students that open enroll out. So all those numbers ultimately kind of, we gotta make an assumption, how many kids are we gonna have? We don't know, so let's just go with 226. And then I modeled these costs out. So this column here is going to model what that $2,800 cost is for each student. So at Big Bend Elementary, in this particular this cell right here, there is no cost, okay? Because we don't have to pay a community partner since we're at Big Bend. All right, but we do have a cost here for MASD personnel, okay? So at $47,808, that accounts for a part-time teacher and a 4K aide. We have 4K aides in all of our buildings. Every student in the district has fixed costs. So think of the fixed costs as what it costs for our IT department district-wide. Andy Wagner, myself, Christine Bowden, pupil services, paying off the debt at Mukwonago High School. That's not just associated with the kids who attend MHS. That affects all kids. One day they'll all go through that building. So there are fixed costs on each student. And then finally, we have $475 cost for transportation that we give as a parent contract. Operating our 4K program as we do it right now is $1.3 million. Okay, now obviously those 4K students bring in revenue through the $10,000 per student. In addition to that $10,000, we get $742 per pupil. That $742 is per pupil categorical aid. So there are obviously revenues that match this. The next scenario I provided is that if I just kind of scroll to the right here, I've removed this line item to represent Little Lambs. So I think there's so they have room for 20 students there. I moved those students down and I put them into Rolling Hills Elementary School. I'll talk about why in just a second, but Rolling Hills has one classroom that's not vacant, but we could use in a pinch. Okay, so obviously we have no cost to a community partner there, but then we would have to hire a part-time teacher, a 0.5 4K teacher along with an aide. The fixed costs still remain, the transportation costs still remain. But then we could move Little Lambs to Rolling Hills. We would actually have a small savings. We'd go from 1.43 million to 1.327 million. The last scenario is if we were to lose another 4K partner. So if Kids Connection said we do not want to offer 4K at our Rivercrest location for whatever reasons that might be, then we'd be removing both of those. And at that point, we would have to find a school, and there's a couple options that I'll bring to you in Section and Clarendon. We would need to create 2 sections at particular buildings, and you'll hear me say that. I would say let's recommend Clarendon. There's some space there. I'll show the maps in a second that we could renovate both spaces at the same time. You know, alternatively, you could leave one section at Rolling Hills and do one section at Clarendon, but whatever you have at Clarendon, you're going to have to renovate a space to get it ready. So you could, we do have some options there, and then this cost, this is the annual operating cost of 1.279 million. So this actually gets cheaper as there is a cost savings by pivoting off the 4K partner and bringing it in-house. So you're kind of transferring this, here's $2,800 for every kid, but then you have to, in lieu of paying that, you have to put more people on your payroll. So this kind of captures those moving parts, okay? What we aren't looking at right here in this is that there's a one-time fixed cost of getting Clarendon ready to go. Okay, so I'll show you that in a second here. All right, the second scenario that I have then here, the next page has the 3 same scenarios. All right, the baseline scenario, moving Little Lambs to Rolling Hills, and then moving 2 4K partners into our buildings here. This scenario here, so this would be the second page I gave you here, ultimately highlights we move all the MAS, all the 4K teachers onto our payroll. So we know that Kids Connection at the Rivercrest location had a hard time and could not find a 4K teacher. We hired the 4K teacher internally, and we took care of that problem. We really just had to. In lieu of providing the $2,800, since we're removing like basically the biggest expenditure, you know, if we assume at Kids Connection Chapman, we would have a full-time teacher and an aide to work at that building. The all-in cost for a full-time teacher with benefits and a 29.75-hour-a-week aide would be $100,000, okay? That's kind of like the middle. It might be cheaper than that, it might be more than that, but on average, that's what a teacher's gonna cost. That's our basic average teacher with an aide added on to that there. So I think it's $80,000 for the teacher if they have a $50,000 salary, $30,000 of benefits, and then $20,000 for a part-time aide. That's your $100,000 cost. And instead of paying the $2,800 per student, if we were to pay $500 per student, the provider would still get a revenue source, but they would not be paying that cost of the employee. So there's a trade-off that goes both ways. We alleviate the need for them to hire. We provide the people, get them trained. They're really our employee at that point. And then they would have the opportunity for before and after care. For students that are 4K attending their facilities, there's still a room for them to profit as a business. So that's what this scenario here is. That in all 3 scenarios, again, this is the scenario of we provide all of our partners with an employee. Okay, the all-in cost there, it gets more expensive now. This is $1.39 million. This is the same model, but instead of operating at Little Lambs, we would move to Rolling Hills. So we ultimately remove this line item here. Okay, now it becomes blank. There's no cost to Little Lambs if they're gone, but we do have to account for 20 students at Rolling Hills. So we'd have a 0.5 teacher. If that teacher starts at $44,500, if that's a new teacher, half of that amount plus the cost of an aide puts us at 40. This cost would be $1.381 million. It's actually slightly more financial beneficial to the district, okay? And then finally, the last scenario is that we move those 2 sections both through Clarendon. Again, that would have to require space renovation, but then this cost is $1.367 million. So this is just an option. I guess we found ourselves in that position now where somebody can't hire somebody. We have to start to pivot and make a game plan. We're working on the contractual language to establish with our 4K partners so we can account for this very thing. and have further conversations with them if we're gonna go down this route, okay? The last example then that I have, all right, the last scenario rather, is if we continue to staff everybody the same, but the only difference here is that this Prairie View AM, we would look to make this a full-time pilot, a full-day 4K. So it's really the scenario 2 and 3 are the same, with the exception of just Prairie View, rather than having 2 half-days, they'd have 1 full day and 1 part day. So there was information that was shared with Learning Committee last Monday night that we surveyed our 4K parents from the current year and the 2 years prior and asked, would you like full day, would you like part day, as it currently is, and I think there's people who are looking for both. I think there might be some value in doing a pilot. If we were gonna pilot full day, we'd really wanna do it in our own buildings. So I just threw Prairie View out there. They have 2 classrooms that can be used for 4K, so one would be an all-day 4K and the other could be a part day, and those students would just remain in there for wraparound care. So you can see that the $100,000 cost is for the full-time teacher with benefits, their aide, and then the $40,000 cost is for the part-time 4K teacher who only does one half day, okay? So the summary here, the very last page, then I basically have all 3 scenarios that are kind of condensed here with the amount of expenditures here. So here, you know, we have Kids Connection AM, Kids Connection Chapman AM, Kids Connection Chapman PM, the second Kids Connection Chapman AM, the Kids Connection Rivercrest. You can see all the various sections that we have. Then we have Big Bend AM, Prairie View AM and PM, Clarendon AM and PM. So you can kind of see the very first scenario was 226 kids. You can kind of see the hypothetical enrollments there. Then we get rid of Little Lambs and we put that in at Rolling Hills. There's the cost. And then we remove 2 sections there, one at Kid Connection Rivercrest, one at Little Lambs, and then we bring them into Clarendon. So you're seeing just those annual operating costs there. Again, not the one-time cost to renovate the spaces, and I'll get to that here very shortly. These 3 scenarios represents where we would have students if we were to make $500 per student payments to the community partners, and then we hire those people in-house. So there is a markup for that. It's about $50,000 more to do this option, but I guess the investment is you now have the teachers under your direction, under Stephanie Blue's direction, and Colleen Hoynes, rather than relying on anybody to hopefully find you a good teacher. Now you assume the responsibility to own that, and that requires an investment. That also assumes that our community partners would be comfortable with a $500 arrangement per student. Does that work for their business model? I don't know. We have not discussed that with them yet, but to go more than the $500 then would require a bigger financial. That $50,000 markup I just mentioned would become more. So
Where did you come up with the 500?
I had to start somewhere. Yep,
Okay,
Vito,
yeah.
do that again, Vito. Yep, reach for it in the air.
Because I mean, effectively, you're renting space, and then there's
Exactly.
some overhead there as well, right?
Yep.
But
So
I
yeah,
don't
that's
know what-
exactly it.
I don't know what that number would come to. Is it
So if I'll,
kids for a full day?
so like at Kids Connection Chapman, that would be $25,000 that they would have for letting us operate a 4K program in 3 classrooms, 3 times per day. And then they would be before and after care. VCDC, Vernon Child Development Center, would get $16,500. The Y would get $22,000. So it's $22,000 to operate this, and then they have the before and after care. Does that work for them? I don't know, but they do not have the expense of the personnel. That may work.
And the before and after care is additional funding that they get from parents.
Yep, that
Yeah.
nothing to do with us, but yeah, that's revenue for them to potentially get and likely get.
So I mean, I'm just curious, like what we were paying for that SOAR rental space compared to what this is, because this is $16,000 a year for, would you say, 2 classrooms?
Mm-hmm.
And what were we paying for SOAR? And I don't know how big those spaces, if there's an equivalent there or not.
Yeah, you know, the cost per square foot thing it does still continue to matter. But for before and after care purposes, those spaces are regulated by the Department of Children and Families, I want to say. And there are number of children per square foot limitations that obviously they have to meet their codes. And there's only so many spaces in the community that actually work for somebody to have a child care facility at. So, the cost that you would rent a retail store is, I think that's child care is its own market and probably its own rate. We could I know we paid at Lillian Rose, we paid $25,000 or $6,000 a year for that space there.
Yeah, and that's the question, how big was that space? And what's the, that three classroom one, you said was $25,000?
Yeah, let me go back to that there.
I'm just trying to compare, because it effectively seems like what we're coming to is renting space, and if we say, hey, $500, which, like you said, you had to start somewhere, but they come back at $750, it's like, well, equivalently,
Sure.
what's that cost per square foot?
Do we know if they have a preference? Do the community partners have a
Sean,
preference
you want to
for
answer that
which
one?
of these?
No, we don't know that. We have not discussed these options with them. We did talk to our community partners and told them that the board would be starting in the month of December discussions about 4K options for next year. So they know the discussions are taking place, but we haven't gotten down to reviewing different plans with them.
I think the alternative right now is that if we continue with our current contract, if they are unable to provide a teacher, like that's not what the contract calls for. The contract says we pay you, you get the teacher. That's how this thing is drawn up. If they are unable to find the teacher, then we do need to have offsetting language that says, hey, we'll get the teacher. Now we are going to deduct that $2,800, whatever that deduction is, to make ourselves whole. Not trying to have a win or a loss for anybody, but we can't give you the $2,800 and pay your bills. That just doesn't work. Shouldn't. So we could, I guess, go a couple different ways. Continue to do this as we've done it and give the 4K people the opportunity to hire their own staff. With the caveat that if they cannot, then we have to and we will, and they have to agree to offset language there. Alternatively, we could approach them and ask, do you want us to hire this? Do you want to just naturally go this route right from the get-go with the per student cost that we would provide them, that you guys would be comfortable with? Or the bigger conversation, which happens next week Monday, is, what's the long-term vision here? Are we going to start this party at some point here and bring 4K into more buildings? Is that the direction you guys want to go? I guess that's for you 9 to ultimately decide. So we have some opportunities to do that. I guess we can continue to talk about this, but from a space perspective, like if we're looking really just short term, next year, like where are we going to go? If Little Lambs, as we know, is for sale, we don't know what kind of community partners coming in there, but it's kind of hard to bank on somebody that we don't even know who the owner is and if they're really willing to work with us.
Yeah, I don't think we should count on them for next year.
Which means we have to, if we can't count on them for next year, we just have to assume
Yep.
the best option is to bring it in.
Yep.
That's a safe assumption right now, right?
And then, Andy, do you have an estimate for what it's going to take to rework?
Yep. So I'll bring the map up here. So let me just make this a little bit bigger here. So this is Big Bend Elementary. Let me go back. Smaller. Okay, I'm sorry, Sean. Trying to help all the viewers at home by making it bigger. But so here's Big Bend Elementary here, and this area in red is where we ultimately used 809 square feet to install or implement a 4K classroom, and that's where they're currently teaching. So there's room currently for one 4K section. So we were able to make 809 feet work. Now, ideally, when do things work out ideally? Not all the time, but if it was ideal, then 1,200 square feet is like the common square footage you would hear as a recommendation for a 4K space, but you can get by with less. Here's Prairie View. So right when you walk in through the main doors here, this is where our current 4K space is here. There's a bathroom here in the back side, at the back of the room. Here was the 4K wraparound care, but we needed this space for an extra fifth grade class. So a fifth grade class is currently here, and now our 4K wraparound takes place up in this classroom here. But in theory, at Prairie View, you could do full day 4K here where my mouse is wiggling, and then the half-day 4K section would go here, and they would just stay in there for their wraparound care if they're getting before or after care services.
Is that like the Y care
Yep,
close to
yep,
that school?
correct, yep. So this space here is 832 square feet. This space here is 726. So it can be done in a smaller space. We're doing it now. So this is section elementary here. This space here is currently a 2 locker rooms. So we could convert this 924 square feet. Again, you want to have a bathroom in a 4K classroom. So this 924 square feet could be converted into having a bathroom. There already is a bathroom right here for boys and girls. We could use that plumbing to extend the bathroom and put it right in the classroom there. So we do have the option to get one classroom in that section if that was the case. The long-term vision for this space here, and I'll just make this bigger for a quick second here, is to have 2 special ed flex classrooms. So we can still achieve a temporary 4K solution without abandoning the long-term strategy for that particular building. At section, this cost, this estimate is just under $300,000 to do this 926 square feet. Okay. All right. So then the next building that we have is, this is Rolling Hills. This is the main entrance here. There's a area just to the north of the library that's 974 square feet. That's really it's a learning lab. If push came to shove, could this space be used? I think the answer is yes. Sean, do you know anything that I don't know, I guess, about that space?
Other than we haven't had conversations with Rowan Hills yet.
Yeah. They might tell you something different, but I'm going to stand before you tonight and say, if, again, push came to shove, I think this would be an option, okay? If we were desperate, this is definitely an option. So this is 974 square feet.
That was rolling.
Rolling Hills, yep, so there's space for one potentially. Now, this is already kind of designed as a classroom, so like there's no major renovation that needs to take place. Obviously, you're going to want to carpet it a little bit more because they sit on the floor a lot in front of the teacher. There's some furniture you'd want to get that's age appropriate. You know,
Bathroom?
No, that's the only problem, is we don't have a bathroom there, so we would have, if they were to put a bathroom in it, we'd have to open up floors to get plumbing there.
that would make it more expensive, undoubtedly. Here, if you're looking just for the classroom space, and I get the headache that comes with not having a bathroom adjacent or in the classroom, that's a little more difficult. But again, it's an option if we were desperate. The long-term strategy here for this is to turn this in, and I'm right over the classroom there. That's to be a special ed flexible classroom. So again, we wouldn't have to abandon that long-term strategy here at Rolling Hills. And then lastly, we have Clarendon. So Clarendon, the main entrance is right here. And then there's 2 storage areas that I believe used to be locker rooms for the gymnasium. There are some showers that are already installed right there. This is 1,778 square feet, call it 1,800. So we would be able to turn this into 2 classrooms. I'm sorry, so there would be 2 classrooms here with bathrooms. And then the long-term strategy here, and I'll just zoom in here for a second, is again to have a flex classroom for grade bubbles that get big, and then a special ed flex classroom. So we could still maintain our long-term strategy without, wholesale changes of any sort. This particular update, the one-time cost would be $570,000. So again, that's to get bathrooms in there and, get it ready. So if we were looking for, hey, we need 1 classroom, community partners out, the quickest option that we could maybe get ready in the shortest amount of time is Rolling Hills. If we need 2 classrooms, then we're likely going to have to look to either renovate what's that section or at Clarendon. Given the central location of Clarendon, losing a partner like Little Lambs, which isn't too far from here, that geographically, proximity it makes sense. And then if you wouldn't, in my opinion, you wouldn't renovate just half of that space. You do it all at once while the contractor's on site and get it ready to roll. And then you could potentially get yourself 2 options, 2 classrooms there. So we might have to make decisions like this in the next 30 or 60 days. Obviously, that's something we don't want to delay too long, but those are the options here. There's a lot of kind of moving parts here with 4K.
Because this, you said currently is storage.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they could start on that sooner than summer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Where's the stuff go?
I would like to, well, I don't want, Andy, can we throw it away?
Well, really-
I don't know what's in there. We'd have to work with.
Everything that's in the special ed flex area right now is furniture, so some of that is just excess that would possibly go to auction. Other could go under the bleachers at the high school. We've been doing some of that now already. The flex area to the top of the screen, that has custodial in it as well as an office for the gym teacher. So we would probably have to find a different space for the gym teacher, and then the custodial items, I'm sure I can find to fit somewhere. The biggest part was the floor scrubber, but I can find a space.
There's some space, Andy, right, in the basement for storage
Yeah.
options? Is that
Yeah.
correct, Sean?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we,
Dirt floor, yeah.
Any classrooms down there?
once upon a time,
At one time there was, yeah. We do not do that any longer.
like Andy did 4th grade down in the basement. The rest of the class was upstairs. They made Andy go down, so. What questions about, that's a lot of stuff there. Obviously, it's pretty important, and that 23-24 school year is coming up, and we got some moving parts here. So I guess what questions do we have? I think a lot of this information is gonna be relevant at the special board meeting, or work session rather, next Monday. So a lot of this is gonna be food for thought. Let it marinate on the brain for a little bit, and we'll talk more next week, but we gotta start making decisions here, I think, quickly.
I mean, obviously, timing sounds like the big issue, but if we do have to make changes, 600,000 is a big number too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, ideally, again, what's ideal? Not much, but ideally, you're able to embed this in a referendum.
Right.
But if you need it by September 1st, I don't think we have enough time to do a referendum, so that's just what it is. We do have fund balance. We do have, we've set money aside each of the last 3 years. We're in a great position to handle something like this. It's not like we don't have to short-term borrow. We've increased our cash position really for things like this. So we're able to handle this. It's just, is the priority there for you guys?
It does demonstrate that we are gonna have some serious space constraints in the near future, and definitely in the next few years, and the need to have more discussions about that possible referendum.
And if we're stacking a SOAR building on top of renovation cost, it seems like we've got some of that money there available, but it seems like we've also got 12 places to spend it.
Absolutely. I mean, so like when we talk to our state legislators, if they were to say, hey, you guys set aside $2.5 million last year. Looks like to us, you have all the money you need. I'd say, well, we used $1 million of it this year. Looks like we're gonna spend $54,000 more on door sensors. We like a SOAR facility to house that off campus. If we can get our 18 to 21-year-old building to go with that, that'd be even better. That money it's there for one-time purposes, but it's gonna go really quick. But it's there, we have that. It's just, you can't, to your point exactly, we have 12 different ways we could spend this. But it's what's the biggest priority at the moment.
Yep.
So, yeah,
And we're bringing the capital plan in, what, a month or two?
sure, yep, when we have an agenda that isn't too full, yes.
So, I mean, so with timing, what do you think our deadline? I mean, it's by our February meeting? By February meeting, are we still, if we hit the go?
I would as far as making decisions on 4K, I would say
Yeah.
by the end of January, we should be
Who's registration?
finalizing
Registration's February, isn't it?
typically, and we might have to push registration back
Yeah.
a little bit.
I know our 4K information night is always towards the end of January, and you obviously want to go to that meeting to say, here's what we are offering. This is where we are offering it. If we're going to pilot 4K for a full day, we want to explain all those details. I would prefer not to go to that meeting with, we might do this, but we might do that. Like, parents just want to know, what's my option going to be for little Johnny next year?
Do we make more money per kid if it is full day versus half day?
Yes.
Okay.
The expenses go up too.
Is our program breaking even over the whole scope? Are we breaking even on this program? Are we making money on it? Are we losing a lot of money?
No,
What's
we're not losing money, but I would say that the amount of money that we generate at the 4K, it doesn't put us underwater in any stretch. Because again, when you have your third Friday FTE, half-day students count as a 0.6 FTE. But it basically, we don't break even. We do a little bit better than breaking even, but it's not like material. It's not like it brings us $400,000 to make decisions with. So it's pretty close to break even, but it doesn't cost us.
So if we're assuming Little Lambs is gonna close, we need a solution for that, or not close, sell.
Yep, I think the immediate solution is basically,
Should we
Few-
move something forward to the board for now, for that one section at least? So at least you guys can start planning that for registration, because as a parent, I wouldn't want to be in limbo.
I would say that if we're gonna make that decision now, that, I mean, please hop in here, Sean, if I'm speaking out of turn here, or say something you don't want me to say. But,
Help, I'm
this
drowning.
should come to Rolling
Little late.
Hills or Clarendon.
Okay.
Like, we have to be prepared to say, it'll be at one of the two.
Mhm.
I just don't know where else we would go. There's no other 4K providers. We could turn into a community partner, so short of time and options, let's make our own.
Well, I'd like to make a motion then that we move to the full board, discussion on whether it's gonna be Rolling Hills or Clarendon, one of the 4K sections, because Little Lambs is closing.
Second.
Any discussion? I think I have a question. I mean, so clearly the Clarendon option gives us 2 rooms, which is the safe move, because we don't know if our 4K partners, if they'll sign up for us hiring the teachers, right? There's a lot of questions,
Mm-hmm.
but Clarendon is the safe move, the expensive move, but the safe move.
Yes.
Yep. I think you're ultimately just taking a project, if maybe 2 or 3 years from now, you're gonna get to it through a more grandiose capital improvement. You're fast tracking that right now, saying we're gonna put it on our dime right now, and
And that's the one that we have to figure something out, like that's going away. We cannot depend on that, so this is the one that can't wait. The other stuff is less urgent, I would say, like the why stuff, it's like, all right, we'll see what they say, we can talk to.
sure.
This has to happen.
Yeah,
because
the Little Lambs is
if she gets an offer and they're not doing it, we have nothing.
correct.
Correct.
You're
We
right.
could offer a full day and an AM session here.
Yep. You could do that.
Did Stephanie ever reach out to parents? I think I asked at that last learning committee, for her to reach out to. All the survey that she did were current people that were enrolled in our program, and I thought she missed a large target audience of people that chose not to enroll in 4K, but chose to do private school. Because all of those parents that are choosing to do private school, like myself, are probably doing it for reasons of that's just what they wanted to do, but also because they wanted the full day option, which is what we're not offering. And she said, well, I don't know how to get their contact info. And my suggestion would be the parents that, like me, would come for kindergarten, you would assume they didn't send their child to 4K for X reason. Either they homeschool their kids for 4K, or they just let their kids stay home, or they wanted a full day option at a private school. So that's,
So you're saying
Within this-
survey parents
survey.
who are with you for the first time at 5K, but weren't with you at 4K.
weren't with us in 4K. I just feel like we missed a huge being, I don't know how big, but if it's, yeah. She's gonna bring that back? Okay.
And then the Rolling Hills option, was that the one without the restroom?
Yep.
So that's the only issue I have with the motion, is that if the motion is to choose Clarendon or Rolling Hills doesn't have a restroom.
Correct.
Not in the classroom. Not unless you're gonna, you can minimally, for a minimal investment, you could get that classroom ready to go. For a much heavier investment of installing a bathroom, yeah, that,
Because what was that, 300,000 to do?
300,000 to do clear, section, $570,000 to do Clarendon. We didn't even provide a number for Rolling Hills
Okay,
because, I mean, it's already set up as a classroom. It's not like it's a current locker room with, 1970 tile and lockers.
it's a
in there.
classroom without a restroom,
Yes,
So-
correct. It's a learning space that can be used in a pinch, yep.
and it doesn't help our future plans.
Really hurt 'em.
What doesn't help our future plans?
The Rolling Hills conversion, if we added that restroom in there, does that,
No, I mean, for 4K to get into Rolling Hills requires a little bit more of a build out there on the west side, on the back end of the school, so Rolling Hills doesn't really have necessarily the space to just accommodate 4K. We would put it in this location, but let me take a look here on the map. If I could have what it would look like here.
It's not really a long-term solution.
Yeah,
right, and
It's
and
not
the
in the
motion we
future
have
plans.
is to pick Clarendon
So
or
the-
Rolling Hills, right? So we left section out of this as
So-
far as the discussion. Because that's one of them you had up here?
yeah, I mean, it can be a part of your motion here, your considerations, but this is, and I'll zoom out again, I'm sorry here. This is Rolling Hills, main entrance here. If we were gonna bring 4K in, we would have to build out here for 2 classrooms and storage, and then we convert this space into a 4K classroom, and that would give us 3 sections of 4K through 5th grade.
And that's current playground space right there right now. So you-
And this is future plan, so that.
Yep, that's long-term planning. So again, the short-term strategy is you have this library space here for special ed flex purposes. We would just take that right now. But, yeah, I mean, putting a bathroom in there,
What are the closest restrooms? Just because,
Down, yeah, down
Yes,
the-
right there.
Yep.
is that like a huge hike? Like my daughter doesn't have a bathroom in her classroom now. They have to go into the hallway and go around, and they seem to be doing just fine.
what grade is she in?
4K.
4K?
It's not a huge hike, no.
Okay. So, I mean, in the grand scheme of saving money, I'm all for walking 20 feet.
Yeah.
If there's gonna be an aide in the classroom, because like she has a teacher and she has an
Yep.
aide that's always there, so someone stays back, they kind of shuttle them back and forth to make sure no one gets lost, and then,
So that, I guess that was actually one point I put in my memo there, is that aides, as we staff the whole operation, if that's the route we go, and we have MASD personnel in our own buildings, obviously, in the 4K community partners, the aides cost for 13 sections, it's a $100,000 investment. We also have 5K aides in our kindergarten classrooms, so like those, again, are all great things, but those are investments that I think every now and again, we should just revisit some of those to make sure that we're feeling good about our investments and decisions we make. So, yeah, there would be aides, but that obviously comes with a cost, so.
do we have at Big Bend and whatever school, Rolling Hills? What school has 4K right now? Is it Rolling Hills?
So Prairie View
Prairie.
and Big Bend.
Are those teachers, because there are staff, are they encouraged to have parent helpers? Because like I go
I
every
think
other
so,
week and
sure.
I'm in the classroom, but that's just another benefit. Yes, aides are important, but it's a lot of little people that are, needing
Mhm.
extra help. So that could just be another bonus in the classroom. to
I
help
don't,
our
I don't have
teachers.
that answer for certain. I can
Oh.
find out, though. I'm assuming that our 4K teachers, just like our 5K teachers and other primary teachers, have lots of parent help.
Yeah, like we have one mom a day
Mhm.
for at least half the day in the classroom, so that helps.
And then, Tom, you reviewed section, is that another option that the full board should consider?
Yeah, I mean, there's one space that's unused. It's used as a locker room. It's not used as a regular learning space. Let me just find it. I think it's the first one I showed
It's
you
the
here.
boys and the girls' locker room, and currently there would be 2 separate bathrooms there that could be converted, so we wouldn't have to run much.
This is the main entrance to section. You walk in here. Here's the gymnasium and cafeteria. And this space right here, the long-term vision is to use that as a special ed flex space. There's currently a boys' bathroom and a girls' bathroom on the left and right sides of what we're looking at. If I scroll to that, that's the same space there. We would just renovate that into having a bathroom here on the left, a closet here on the right, and then a class space in the middle. So this, because there's an adjacent bathroom, you have a lot of the kind of, not problems, but you have better solutions more close by for plumbing purposes. So yes, section is an option if you were looking to make one classroom. Now, section is a half mile, if that, away from Rolling Hills. So I would say from a cost perspective, if you need one classroom, go to Rolling Hills. Like geographically, they're right next to each other. So Rolling Hills is more easily set up and ready to go. Converting that space is gonna take, contractors and a lot more labor to get that thing ready. It is an option though, yes.
Okay, I was gonna ask if you wanted to amend it, but if Rolling Hills sounds like it's actually a better option than Section, and
So we need to talk to Rolling Hills about how they're utilizing that space. But I would agree. So you have one option, Clarendon, that is going to be a little more expensive. Then you have the option at Rolling Hills, which is much closer to being ready, but does not have the restroom. So I don't think it adds much by reviewing Section. I would say probably Clarendon would be the better choice.
okay,
Going to go
Do
that
you want
route.
to amend this to say that we're just going to bring to the full board this and decide what we want to do?
Yeah, let's do
I
that.
think you said that your motion, Carolyn, was to bring the discussion to the full board on bringing 4K to Clarendon or Rolling Hills for next school year. I guess, did you want to amend that, or do you want
Why don't we amend it to bringing your presentation or all of your options to the full board? That way, if anybody has insight that we're not thinking about on why one of these choices that I'd be eliminating otherwise would be a better choice.
That's a good idea.
on bringing
Yeah.
the 4K discussion to the full board?
But primarily to solve, as I'm amending, to solve the issue of the fact that Little Lambs is closing, because I want to get that addressed before January,
Yeah, that's our
if we
main
can.
focus.
So we can make a decision, you guys can make a move.
so with an amended motion, do we need a new second?
Yes.
Yes, Vito agrees. But
Second.
there you go.
Okay, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I think that's a wrap.
Oh, no.
No?
Oh, no.
Oh,
We're
SOAR,
hanging
sorry.
out, guys. Yeah, so this won't take as long as,
Sorry.
this won't take as long. So for SOAR, I just want, we talked about, options. The offer we made for $700,000 to buy 560 Bayview Road was not taken. Sellers there don't want to move off their price. So that issue has been put to bed. So we're moving on. We have to move on, clearly. Vito, I think you asked us to say if we were going to spend a certain number, a certain dollar value here on renovating an existing space, what would it, let's take a look at building brand new. For 7,000 square feet, we would be looking at, and included that budget in my memo, $2.8 million. That estimate came from Bray Architects, and so there's no land cost in there. That is just to use existing land that we already have here. CG Schmidt validated that, and they were within $100,000 of that value there. So we can take that number and say, all right, that's what the cost would be. If we were really gonna, I guess a couple things here. The costs now versus what they were in the 2019-20 school year are 30% higher. If we were really gonna build new to have a building in place by September 1st, that'd be a big stretch, and we'd have to pay a premium to get the rush, the rush on build out. We need at least 3 months to design the building and 1 month to bid out the projects. It's tough, and I just kind of go to say I don't know if that's really an option without paying a lot for it. We are continuing to look at other options. So I think the biggest issue right now is making sure SOAR has a home. We have asked St. James if anything has changed within their plans for next year where we could stay with them for one additional year. Initially, they said, you have 1 year with us. They said they might, in all capital letters, might be able to accommodate, so certainly not a done deal, but it sounds like at least there's a chance. That would just simply buy us time. I think their long-term vision for that is to offer education as they once did, and that would be the end of us being in their spaces. We are continuing to look at other spaces in the district. I included a memo that we actually delivered to the school board on April 3rd, 2018. And in that memo, I state that, you know, our previous director, Tim Lemke, Director of Pupil Services, Tim Lemke, he preceded Christine Bowden. I say, in my memo, Tim started this process more than 1 year ago, and I joined him as we were beginning to look at sites during the 16-17 school year. So we've kind of been on this topic for quite some time. We had you know, when the problem goes away, it's out of sight, not of mind. We were at Lillian Rose. Well, that option went away. I think that goes to show that when we rent, things can turn on a dime rather quickly. So, you know, we're at the mercy of the landlord. So, you know, we're in the spot that we are right now because we don't have a long-term strategy. We're just going from short-term strategy to short-term strategy. My question for you is, would you rather rent a space for SOAR or own a space? Previously, when we talked about Eagleville, when we were going to get or working on the trailer, when we had the discussion of renting the trailer or buying, we said buy. So I guess we're going to continue to explore options. The bottom line is we have to have an option for September 1st. Hopefully we can buy time with hopefully St. James. But going past that, we need to find a long-term strategy, I think. I mean, I know. So this conversation is something that we just continue to have. So we got to find something at some point here. Andy and I have toured a couple of spaces here this past week. We have another one on Wednesday. Some are to buy, some are to rent. But we're obviously just trying to demonstrate to you we are continuing to look at all options and see what we can do here.
When do you suppose we can nail down St. James to an answer?
Sean, you're a church member there, Sean.
And a board member, I believe.
No, I'm not on the board there.
They said
But-
no to him.
Bertzi is though, isn't he?
So they haven't given us a firm answer, but we can reach out to them again this week. Obviously, if we could stay there another year, that buys us time on making a permanent decision. You know, it's never great if you have to buy a car or buy a house when you have to.
You want it bad, you get it bad.
Right. And so let's hope that works out. But we'll reach out to them again later this week and see if they can give us a firm answer. So next week at the full board meeting, we can give you an update.
At least that's tough when they'll be able to make a decision.
Exactly. That would be great.
I know that they need to work through the Archdiocese of Milwaukee. There's a 5-person council or committee that ultimately gives the blessing, no pun intended, to letting St. James lease the space. This isn't just solely the people at that building that get to make that decision. There's higher-ups that tell them yes or no. So I know that takes time. They'll meet like you meet once a month at the end of the month. So once the official proposal goes in, then it can get considered and then it can get voted on. I would hope that we could have an answer by February, because anything thereafter, we would really have to pivot quickly. So more of an update, really no action there that we're looking for, I guess, unless you had feedback.
To answer your question, I don't know long-term. Like, if we end up building a new middle school and we can repurpose the current middle school to house SOAR and the 18 to 21 and building a grounds and whatever other things that we can include in there, that would be awesome. But if that's not in the long-term planning and we have to do, just modifications to the middle school, then I guess we'd continue to rent until we can afford to build, or maybe that's part of the referendum too, is we end up building a place for it.
I think that the only tough piece, and again, going back to our memo that we provided here in 2018, there's a number 5 facilities that we looked at. Mm-hmm. We recommended one, and that's when the village said, you guys can't come in here. You guys, there's no sprinklers. So now we have to answer the question, it's like an apartment, we're gonna rent it, but we're also gonna renovate it. Like, do we really wanna go down that route? And that becomes the sticking point. There's a lot of places we could rent, but on our dime, we're gonna have to install water, sprinklers.
Right.
And other things to meet the code. So that, I don't think that's the investment you wanna make, is renovate somebody else's building.
The next huge decision that we start here in very short order is what we're doing. Mm-hmm. So once we know what we're doing, then we can figure out how. So, yeah,
You guys have a lot of big decisions. It's,
See if
Joe
St.
Cook's got
James
a-
wants some caramels, if that will sway their decision, and I hear they're really good.
Joe Cook's got a lot of big decisions coming up his way. Sean, you played it well. So I think that's it for the, unless you guys have other questions here.
Any other committee member questions in general?
No.
All right. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?